Welcome back, everyone. This is the Changelog. We're a member-supported blog and podcast. They cover what's fresh and what's new in open source. You can check out the blog at thechangelog.com and our past shows at 5by5.tv/changelog. This show is hosted by myself, Adam Stacoviak, and also Andrew Thorp. Andrew, say hello, my friend.
Hey, how's it going, man?
My lips are sticky.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. So, speaking of sticky lips, tune in live every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time right here on 5by5. And this is lucky number episode 97. And we're joined by Drew Blas, a DevOps engineer at Chargify. He's a fellow Rubyist and is starting a DevOps class next month called Ultimate DevOps Academy. So, Drew, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot.
Andrew, I'm gonna let you steal this one away today because you invited Drew on the show. I know he's awesome, but I just don't have the uptake on him quite as much as you do.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll kind of give a little intro. I was out in San Francisco like 2 or 3 years ago, and actually went out to dinner with Lance Wally, Drew, and obviously you know who that is. He's a guy over at Chargify. So I reached out to him not long ago and just said, "Hey, is there anyone at the Chargify?" I know Chargify specifically is the core is not open source, but you know you guys are involved in open source. You're very active in open source. Some of the pieces of Chargify have been open sourced. So is there anyone there that you'd like to have on the show? And then Drew came about. So here you are, Drew. Why don't you give us a little bit of a intro to who you are, what you do at Chargify, what kind of stuff Chargify is doing in the open source world.
Sure. So I joined Chargify about a year ago, and it's been a really great transition for me. I'm traditionally a developer, and with them, I've been recently doing a lot of operations work, so kind of bridging some of that gap and focusing on our infrastructure, and lets me play with all sorts of cool open source tools. And Chargify, if anybody doesn't know, does recurring subscription credit card billing. So if you're building your own SaaS app and want easy plug-in credit card subscriptions, that's what we do. And so, we leverage a lot of big name open source doing that, not just Rails. Of course, we're heavy users of the Active Merchant gem. And we work hard to contribute back to as many of the things we use as possible.
The cool part about that is that Active Merchant started out as open source too, so y'all use it and then contribute back as well. So
yeah, it's a really good feedback cycle.
So specifically with Chargify, I know that obviously the API wrappers are open source, and that's a pretty common thing because you release it via a publicly available Ruby gem. So, that's pretty common for a company to open source something like that. But you guys, well, here, why don't you give us a little bit of the insight into what it looks like to work on specifically the API wrapper and who in-house works on that, and how do y'all manage the open source project?
So, we've got quite a few open source projects in addition to just the wrappers. We have wrappers obviously for a large number of different languages because we want to be as compatible as possible. And so, we've always got everybody kind of pitching in to help out and maintain those. And of course, we can't have a developer in every language. So that's where the open source community at large really comes in helpful to work side by side with us and making sure they're up to date and they handle changes that we might make to the API and stuff like that. And so, that's a really good part of it. And then, of course, all the tools that we're using internally, we try and separate those out into pieces that we can then push back out into the community. Shopify did that when they first opened up the Active Merchant gem, and so we try and follow a lot of that same sort of philosophy. Take any of the pieces we can, and then get them back out there. I heard talk just today about a new one for doing worldwide ISO region management for like lists of all the different principalities and things that and integrating that into Rails. So we're always looking for ways we can extract that stuff out.
Gotcha. So that's like I said, that's a kind of a standard procedure for how some of the companies that work with open source kind of operate. But you guys do a few things that are different over at Chargify. Specifically, you've open sourced docs.chargify.com. So
Yeah,
your whole
that's a really cool one because it anywhere that we might be lacking, we usually get pretty quick feedback for somebody to just go in and throw up a pull request and say, hey, this wasn't explained really well, and or here's a better way to explain this, or anytime there's something like that. And then on top of that, we took our actual Cucumber features from the closed source part of our app and then put them into the docs as well. So the exact same Cucumber feature that says exactly here's how you make an API request and here's what you should expect as a response that we run our internal tests against. Those are right there in the docs, and they're open source and available for viewing and editing.
Yeah, that's a really neat idea. So do you know where the idea to open source the Cucumber features came from?
I don't. It's something that happened really early on, and the guys we spawned off of Grasshopper, which is a telephone exchange 1-800 number service, and again, they were using a lot of internal open source tools and just thought it was a really good way to kind of be as transparent as possible.
Totally, yeah. I know that, personally from my experience, one of the companies that I actually helped start with some friends of mine, my buddy Ryan Schlesinger, he was working not with Chargify, he's using Chargify, and he would kind of give back to a lot of the projects that he was using, and I think documentation was one of them, and he always had very, very good things to say about the response he got, from his contributions to the open source pieces of Chargify. So I think that was, a welcome change. I think that at times with some of the bigger open source projects, you can be kind of scared to, get involved because of sometimes there's some of that elitist mentality. And Chargify definitely, from my experience, has never had that. You guys have always been very open to submissions and ideas and contributions. So is that something that is kind of, how does that culture get developed in-house, like to be very open to that, company-wide?
There's two big things I think that contribute to it. The first one is easy because there's only a couple of us. We have very, very little outside funding. We're pretty much just bootstrapped and expanding with our own profitability, and so everybody's kind of really critical to that operation. And so anytime somebody from the outside comes in and offers help, we're certainly more than happy to take it. We're very, ironically, very humble in that regard. And the other one is, again, because of the small team, we just all really have a passion for doing everything we can to do the best we can for our customers in the community. And, that's the attitude you have to have when you have so few people. And so it just comes naturally. I don't feel I don't feel that I have to, get approval before I turn around and open source something. If I've got a tool I've written on company time and I say, wow, this would be perfect to open source, I just do it. There's no red tape to that.
Gotcha. Yeah. So speaking of tools that you've written on company time, I know you told me about a bunch of different ideas you had, but specifically one of them that you actually just open sourced today, I think, right? Did you want to kind of
sure.
talk
So
about that?
Today's release is called Consignment, and it's a small web service that basically takes incoming messages and parses them and then redispatches them to other remote services. And so it's just an easy way. I kind of think of it like StatsD, but for data and information as opposed to just numeric metrics. And so you can take things like if you have a cron job, and when the cron job finishes and puts out a report, and instead of just shooting off an email or something, send it into Consignment, and then Consignment can look at it, determine what action to take, and then do it. So it might parse the message, see if something went wrong, and then, if something went wrong, it might send a PagerDuty alert. Or if everything looks okay, it might just save it to a database for later reference. Or it can send emails or do any number of different things with whatever logic you write. So it's just kind of a centralized way to really easily pop any kind of that information in, and then turn around later and set up your rules for how you want to handle those messages. And you don't have to go back to wherever the message came from and keep changing things.
Gotcha. So this is looks like it's a Node project. Is that something that is used in-house in Chargify, or is that just like a weekend hack project that you...
So this is my first open source Node project, and I did Node just because I thought it was the simplest way to do non-blocking. There was going to be a lot of back-end calls to other remote services, calling out to PagerDuty or to an email service and all those things, and Node just seemed like the right fit to then you don't have to put those into like a background queue or something.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's a fun thing to hack on for sure. Internally though, so you may have said this before, I may have just kind of spaced out on it, but does Chargify, do you see any node happening internally with Chargify, or is there any now, or?
Well, we're definitely going to be putting consignment into pretty heavy use. There's a lot of places that I can see it fitting in. It in the same way, like I said with StatsD, like you just throw StatsD reporters everywhere, and then later on decide if they're useful or not, and you can do your analytics in Graphite or whatever. It's the same kind of thing. Oh, I'm building something and I might want to do something with this information later, so I'll just throw it out to consignment. And then, it might be 6 months down the road and I say, oh, I'd like to start getting an email about these. And you can just update consignment and say, hey, start sending me an email when this event happens. And so that's going to be really good, I think, on our operations front for things like cron jobs and backup reports and chef reports and all that kind of stuff.
So this consignment, it's brand new, released here on the show today, so that's awesome. But it seems like you were looking for the solution and you didn't find it. Can you kind of tell the backstory on, a few days ago?
I just asked around. I always get a lot of success when I tweet out and ask my developer friends, hey, have you guys heard of Service X or something that does this? And, I was looking for even a SaaS app that would do it, and I just couldn't find anything that was quite scratching that itch. This is it's sort of like a Zapier or an if this then that, but much more developer focused. And I had some specific requirements around writing my own code to be able to parse things later on. Just couldn't find anything, so I said, well, I'll just try and throw it together and see what happens.
Gotcha. So it's it sprung out of a need, sprung out of something that a need. So you said you want to roll that back into Chargify. So was it specifically a Chargify need, or a need that you had personally on a different project, or?
I just felt like it's kind of something that comes up a lot anytime I'm doing a new app, whether it's with Chargify or whether it's a personal project or anything, where this same kind of thing, just like StatsD applies in so many different circumstances, that I would just say, ooh, it'd be nice if I could just do this with my cron jobs or something like that. And it came up so many times that I finally got fed up. And when I couldn't find a solution, I said, well, it shouldn't be too hard to throw something together.
So, I mean, the difficulty there was, I think, the 20th. This is the 23rd, so on the 20th you tweeted that out. So, basically, 3 days plus a half day.
Yeah, well, if I don't get the answer on Twitter within like a day, it's probably buried, and I'm not going to get the answer. So, I figured I hadn't heard any responses, so might as well not waste any more daylight.
Gotcha. So another little project that you mentioned, but I think I don't know if you are working on it and haven't open sourced it, or if you haven't actually begun working on it, but you said you called it Auto Cloud. So
yeah, so this is the one I'm really excited about, and I'm on a sabbatical right now for a couple of weeks with Chargify to take some personal time, and my personal coding project will be to convert this for for open sourcing. We use it very heavily internally, and what it does is it's an idempotent control framework for Amazon Web Services. It replicates a lot of what their internal CloudFormation tool does, which is you write basically a description of, what instances and what security groups and what network settings you want. And then it's responsible for making sure that you actually have those configured and set up and running inside AWS. But CloudFormation is JSON based with a lot of sort of kludges to get things like fake variables and fake loops and if statements working. And it just made a lot more sense, at least to me personally, to just take Ruby and inspect the current state of the network via the API and then make the appropriate changes. And that way, when you're writing your description and you say, hey, I want to have 10 instances of this, you can just use a regular Ruby loop instead of something weird. And if you want to have them all belong to a single security group, you can use a variable to do that instead of again some kind of a weird foreign pseudo language. So that just fit a lot better with my personal workflow for managing things, and it's been a super powerful tool for us. It kind of turns it into just like we do at Chef, where everything's idempotent.
Gotcha. So this is something that you're using in production at Chargify now?
Yep, it manages all of our launching of instances and making sure we have as many as we want. And if we're going to change a security group, you just change the configuration file that says here's what security group X is supposed to look like, and it goes and it checks and it says, hey, the security group out on Amazon doesn't quite look like that. Let's change it and make it match up. And so it handles all that logic.
Gotcha. Is this actually part of the core of Chargify that you're going to extract out, or is this some other way that you're using this right now?
So it's a separate app. It's basically its own command line tool, kind of like Chef. And so just something that we run separately. And it makes all the API calls to Amazon to do whatever it needs to do. So it's already its own tool, but it's got a lot of our custom logic, and a lot of the library code is mixed in with our actual configuration files. So it's getting those separated so that it can be a more generic tool that, of course, takes a lot of time.
Gotcha. So we'll come back to that, but this isn't your first hurrah with building something around Amazon, the Amazon AWS suite. So looks like you've built the probably the unofficial Ruby wrapper for SES. Is that right? Yeah.
So SES, when it first came out, I was really excited to use it, and they didn't have a Ruby wrapper for it at the time. So I went and wrote one that was specific to it, and it's been kind of plugging along ever since. The API hasn't changed a lot, and they haven't really added anything new to it. So, it's certainly lived a very long, happy life. And eventually, Amazon did release their own version into the major Ruby AWS SDK. But a lot of people still like to target specifically just SES and not bring in all those other dependencies. So,
gotcha. And SES, for those that don't know, it's Amazon's, was it simple email service, right?
Yep. Yeah, so it's just sending, bulk transactional emails, basically.
Similar to like a SendGrid or...
Yeah, SendGrid or Postmark or Mandrill or any of those.
Gotcha. Was that the first open source project you worked on?
No, but it was it's one of, I think, the most successful ones I've worked on. So it definitely... it was picked up really well by the community. It still gets support requests every once in a while, and has had a lot of pull requests some come in. So it's definitely been popular and still requires work to maintain. So.
Gotcha. Yeah, one of our previous guests, Mike Perham from Sidekick, he was telling us about how he got involved in open source 20 years ago or something before before GitHub and before like Ruby and before
SourceForge.
Before SourceForge, like he was, he got involved before there was anywhere to put your code. So it's like nowadays it's hard to imagine, getting started without a tool like GitHub or SourceForge or, any of the Bitbuckets out there. So I definitely respect that. So what was the first, what would you say your like intro into open source and why you, got started in that realm was?
Oh, this is a sad anecdote, actually. My intro into open source was trying to contribute to the Rails core, way back in the days when they were still on track for their bug tracking and their pseudo pull requests. And I submitted, patches to the core for issues that I was having or issues that somebody else had been reported and I offered to fix. And I probably did this 6 or 7 times. I'd submit a patch and then 6 months later, somebody on the core team would finally look at it. And of course, by then it didn't merge cleanly, especially when they were on Subversion. So they just come and they'd close it and they'd say, no, it doesn't merge cleanly. Thanks anyway.
Wow.
Let us know when you fix it. Of course, it worked when I submitted it, but
right.
So that was kind of a depressing start into trying to help out. And luckily, I wasn't deterred though, and managed to keep plugging away at it. So,
what if they would have accepted it though, and then when they merged it because of they don't have like the pleasures of Git, couldn't like submit it with you, like the merge, like it does on GitHub,
Oh, I mean, I don't
get credit.
I don't know that I care about that, but
I mean, like getting the point, like, oh, I contributed to XYZ, that's what I mean. Like being able to prove
that's nice too. Although if I recall, like back in the early days of there was a script that would check if you had contributed something, like if you had contributed a patch, and it actually checked like the track log to see if an issue that you had submitted a patch on had been accepted or something. So there was still a way to see, even if your name wasn't on the actual commit.
Gotcha. So the Ultimate DevOps Academy, where did the idea to do this come from?
So it's just something I had kind of been thinking about for a long time. I've been doing a lot of different things to try and help mentor and teach. I've been trying to get my public speaking chops up. I was at Mountain West RubyConf and several others giving talks and doing Rails hotline and stuff like that. And so I don't know. I think this just came naturally from that it was an area where a class would be helpful and be a little more effective than doing a lot of one-on-one work. And so I decided to launch the Ultimate DevOps Academy and see if there was anybody interested.
Have you got any interest in it early yet? I mean,
yeah. So far, the interest has been really good, and the feedback's been really positive. We still have seats available, though. It starts August 12th, ultimatedevops.com, which I thought that was a pretty awesome domain name to still be available. Mm-hmm. So just goes to show you that DevOps hasn't, become too mainstream yet, or else you wouldn't be able to get a domain like that. But So yeah, there's still seats available, and I'd love to have more people join up, and I'm excited to, I think it's going to be a good opportunity to reach out to a lot of people at once, and then the big goal is using the benefit of the paid attendance, which is really paying for my time to do a lot of one-on-one work and help and support that. Just like if you need to call me and ask questions and stuff like that. But then it's also going to, I think, generate a lot of material, lesson plans and everything like that I can turn around and give back to the community as well.
I was going to ask, because we just had the last show. We had Jesse Wolgamott on the show, and he runs Ruby Off Rails, and part of his huge selling point to that course, so if you're looking to learn Ruby, that's a really good thing, because during the process of his course, he acts basically as a mentor to you, so seems like you're trying to do the same thing with this, to be able to kind of work one-on-one with someone.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to go off really well, and starts here in a few weeks. And by the end of it, I'll have a ton of live videos and lesson plans and everything. And so, of course, 6 months later, it'll all be out of date, and I'll have to start all over again. But that's the life we lead.
Yeah, are you going to be hitting on Vagrant at all in the course?
I am, yeah. It'll definitely be a part of it, and I'm going to try and hit a little bit of everything, but also go pretty in depth. I mean, we're going to take a pretty decent sized Rails app and turn it into a complete production environment. So we're not just going to be playing around with little bits and pieces, but we're going to have full redundancy, a full operationally sound infrastructure on which you could run, serious traffic on. And, I think sometimes there's a pretty big gap between the intro tutorials that a lot of people get into and then really being able to batten down the hatches.
Yeah, it's a topic that we actually talk about often on the changelog, and it's Kenneth, who, was potentially going to join us, but apparently fell off the earth. Wow, we love Kenneth. He hit on it earlier on, a few months ago. He said it's like this tribal knowledge, right? There's this gap between like beginner and expert, and that's like the tribal knowledge region where you just have to kind of throw yourself into the fire and learn as you go. And it sounds like this is a great step in that direction of helping to share that tribal knowledge in a strategic, structured manner. So.
Yeah.
What would you say the level of I guess the I don't know if you're calling them students or not, you're calling it academy, so I got to imagine they're called students, but registries, people that come and take the course with you, this intensive, like what is the level that they need to be at with DevOps?
So I would say you should be a programmer, and obviously it might be a little easier for Ruby programmers because we're going to be focusing on Chef. Although I kind of make the disclaimer that a lot of this, the lesson plan is revolved around goals. So doing things like your goal is to, write an automation script that gets you to a certain state. And you could do that with Puppet, or you could do it with Ansible or SaltStack or whatever. So it doesn't have to be Chef, but, obviously I'm going to teach what I know best. And so it should be developers who have programming experience and maybe don't have the operation chops that they'd like, which I think comes up a lot. You get developers who can write lots of great code, and that's great when you have no customers. But then you turn around the next day and your app's really popular, and now your problem isn't writing your new features. The problem is keeping things running and scaling and expanding for the users that you have.
I gotta take a little chuckle though publicly on your second line on knowledge prerequisites for the course. It says highly recommended to be able to read, understand, and write simple Ruby programs, but then you also put in parentheses, work through tryruby.org at least twice. That was a cool one.
Well, I mean, I guess I don't want to scare anybody away, but I don't know. So that's tough. I'm sure I'll have a wide variety of ability levels, and it's certainly I make no bones that it's my first time doing a course in this fashion. I've taught a lot of in-person courses before, but never an online one. And so, I'm going to have to take stock of the people in the class, and some of them might have it easy, and some of them might need more help. And I'll just have to help where I need to.
So the class is going to be, is it twice a week, or what is the?
Well, it's one lesson a week, and what I'll be doing is I'll record the video. I'm actually working through doing some test recordings this week, and and then put the video out and kind of go in a pseudo live fashion alongside with the students. So, if we need to stop and talk about things or whatever, we can, but then they've also got the whole video to refer back to. So it's one lesson per week, but we're going to have multiple, live chat and live audio sessions to talk about what's going on and answer questions.
Gotcha. So the cost of this class is $999, so it's definitely an investment, but one that's worthwhile. But after the initial course, you mentioned that you potentially would like to release like open courseware, I think, as you put it.
Yeah. So what I'll probably do is try and package together a good portion of it and release it for free use and to help as many people as I can. I mean, there's no use in me holding on to it and keeping it to myself. And like I said, it'll be outdated in a year. So,
right.
Let's make use of it while it's still good stuff to have.
Any plans to do something like, for those that are familiar with like a Ruby Cones, something like that, to kind of step somebody through enlightenment of DevOps, not so much Ruby itself, but DevOps?
I think it'd be a really good idea. I bet a lot of this might do the same thing in the goals from the lessons, and we'll just have to see how it goes. I definitely have my work cut out for me just for this, so I'm pretty focused on it.
Well, if you're listening now or on the podcast and you plan to go to this, give Drew some slack. It's his first time go around, so share some grace.
Yeah. So.
Well, cool. It sounds really sounds like it's going to be a fun time. It's ultimatedevops.com to plug that for you. Definitely good luck with that. Hope it turns out to be incredible for you.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Kind of wanted to roll back into the auto cloud that we were talking about before. When you guys are sitting around in Chargify, we may have kind of touched on this, but was this something that you wrote, that you spent, like, I don't know what your process or what your internal team, how your roles are split up or anything, but was AutoCloud something that you kind of rolled mostly yourself, or was this a team project or internally now?
It was just kind of something that came out of my personal needs. It wasn't like an initiative that was dictated from the top or anything like that. It was just, we make very, very heavy use of automation for managing the individual servers. And it's a lot like test-driven development. Once you get into that code as configuration sort of mindset for your systems, it felt wrong to be going into the Amazon management console to make a security group change,
right,
or manually writing an individual API call to launch a new instance. And it was like, these are the types of things that, just like with when you're doing Chef or Puppet, that you want to have in a repository, and that way, you've got a log of the changes. Hey, on this date I added this rule. On this date I added 5 new servers to this auto scaling group. All these kind of things, and then you've always got a very authoritative source for what's going on, not just on your individual servers, but on your infrastructure as a whole. And so it just seemed like a very good complement to that. And when we didn't have anything like that, it feels wrong. You can feel it in your gut.
Yeah, it's so you said you're on like a sabbatical from Chargify right now. Is that to work on Ultimate DevOps, or are you going to work on AutoCloud, or what are you doing on your sabbatical, as you put it?
It's a really long vacation, just so doing a lot of family things, and also just taking some time to code on whatever I want to code with kind of no deliverable milestones hanging over my head, and work on what interests me or play with things. The big one for me lately is I've been working through the Matasano security challenges.
Yeah.
And those are super fun. And after I did them the first time, I went back through and I rewrote all of them in Go. So again, just fun ways to do cool things in programming that I don't get to do every day. And so that's what I'm doing with my spare time.
Cool. Yeah. So with Mitchell Hashimoto, we've had him on the show from Vagrant. We've had Solomon Hikes just a few weeks ago on the show from .cloud and Docker. Mitchell he built Vagrant out of a need internally he had for I can't remember the company he was at, but they had a need for it, and he worked on it, and then it became really popular. So he left his company, in his case, and in very good graces and everything, but left to work on Vagrant full time. Solomon Hikes today, he was the CEO of .cloud, and they started Docker, and he today announced that he hired a CEO to replace himself so that he could become the CTO and focus full time on Docker.
Smart.
Yeah, I mean, he's very excited about it. So it's big news, and I think the whole community could be excited about that, to know that Docker is taken off and it's going to get some big legs behind it to go even harder in development. So let's say Auto Cloud kind of starts to take off in the same mold and becomes a real popular tool, and Chargify says we'd love for you to kind of lead this project up specifically and maybe not even work on the Chargify core anymore. Would you welcome something like that? Is that something that would interest you? Or
it definitely would, but I don't know. It's not quite in the same league. Like, I mean, personally, Docker is I'm such a huge fanboy of Docker, and I'm waiting with bated breath for the day that they stick a production ready label on it, so that I can start replacing huge swaths of our infrastructure to use it. But I think Auto's quite a bit simpler of a tool than that. It's not on the same level as something like Chef. It's smaller, and it doesn't even necessarily need full time work on it or improvements, because really all it's doing is just making one configuration match another configuration. And I hope to just have it kind of grow naturally. And as somebody, we have it built to do security groups, and then tomorrow if somebody says, oh, I'd like for it to be able to manage some other AWS component, then they can add that. And then the next day if somebody says, oh, I wish this would work for Rackspace Cloud instead, well, great. I hope we can make that happen too. But
that's the path that you seem to see a lot, and I think that's kind of why I was asking, is because they start off as these much smaller projects, and they kind of grow into these, when they kind of grow in popularity, then people say, well, this is awesome, and I just want to mold it a little bit to use it in this way, and it starts to kind of take off and grow legs and become a whole different monster. So that's the beauty of open source software, though. That's, with Vagrant, Mitchell was telling us that, different images, he's had community support to write different, support for different images. And it was, that's the beauty of it. It's not all on you to do everything. And, you can just kind of manage people that as they need different pieces, they can kind of get them in there. So that's the beauty of open source, man. That's why we do what we do.
Plus, it's nice to have people who like using the things that you wrote.
Well, yeah, definitely. It's nice for people to tell you how awesome you are.
Yeah. Say it again.
All right, so everyone that listens to the changelog knows that we kind of ask 2 questions on every guest that we have on there, and the first one I'll ask you, Drew, to get your input on is for a call to arms. So whether it's something with Chargify or something that you've worked on specifically, with DevOps or consignment or anything like that, do you kind of have a call to arms whether you would love to see the open source community get involved and help out with something?
You know, the honest truth is I just like to have more people contributing overall. Like, there's so many open source projects out there that need help, especially the smaller ones. And I think a lot of people use more of them than they realize. Just like if you go through your gem file and look at how many little gems that you might use on a regular basis and who have authors who, need help or need new features or have issues. It's so easy to find those, and thanks to the wonder of GitHub, help find an open issue and do a pull request for it. And I think there's still lots of developers who get intimidated or just don't get involved, and there's so many easy paths to it. And there's a lot of great, I wish I knew the name, but there's a lot of great services out there now that will help you find open issues
for projects you care about.
On projects you care about to be able to jump in and help out. So, I say the call to arms is do something.
Yeah, so
don't just sit on the sideline.
That's something that we talk about a lot on the changelog is, people, when I go to, conferences or just like my local Ruby groups, and people ask me a question like, how do I get involved with open source? What do I do? I'm like, just find something you care about and just start doing it. It's like, find a project that you care about and go and look at their issues and start contributing code. And you find that the majority of times when you get involved, when you try to start getting involved, the community is very supportive and very helpful. And if you're honest about this is my first time getting involved with open source, not that they hold your hand, but they you just find it's a pretty welcoming community. And most projects that are very active in open source, they kind of have their guidelines and their standards and what you should or shouldn't do when contributing to open source. So, like you said, we just tell people just start doing. That's kind of the key.
And the truth of the matter, I think, and almost universally, but especially on bigger projects, I know the Rails core team has said this many times in the past, is what most open source projects need is not somebody who knows the internals to go and code a solution. What they need is a secretary. They need help from the community to look at open issues and try and reproduce them. Somebody will open an issue and say, here's my problem, and it sits there because nobody knows what the real cause is. So what they really need is hey, look at it. If there's not enough information, respond to the original poster and ask for the information, or try to reproduce it yourself, follow the steps, and then see if you can dig a little bit deeper than the person before you did, and, kind of unlock the key so that one of the core developers can just, knows exactly what he needs to do to fix it, sort of thing. So all that triage and just that user interaction and that's all, that's all you have to have is a grasp of the English language. You don't have to know the internals of the project you want to help out.
Yeah, that's certainly an easy way to kind of, that's kind of how we handle bugs at Pure Charity, Andrew. We do the same thing. We report bugs, and the very next step is to validate them. It's the same case here. It's like, you're reporting an issue. It's a bug with the project or whatever, but that's pretty neat. So we, you weren't on the last show, Andrew, but I started to ask this new question. I thought it was kind of neat, but it doesn't always apply, so it's not always your exact every show question. But I figured for Drew it might make sense. So Drew, if you weren't programming in Ruby, what would you be programming in?
The tough part is there aren't many languages that I don't enjoy. Every new language comes out, I go, boy, I wish I could just do that all the time. So, I wish for the perfect language that did whatever I want. I'm a really big fan of Go, and I've also been trying to, just spread out into just about anything. So
that's exactly what Jesse said last week too. When I asked the question, he's like, I want to learn Go.
Yeah,
that's 2 in a row.
If you kind of like Ruby, but what I found, because if Ruby and Go both are kind of interesting to use. Steve Klabnik, who most people know, we have him on the show every once in a while. He's a big proponent of Rust, the new-ish Mozilla language that is out, and I encourage people to check it out. It's a really cool.
He's got a book on it too, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's like an ebook that is in constant development because the language is so young and constant flux. But Rust definitely worth checking out too.
I read a lot of the theory behind Rust, and it really resonated with me. And of course, just like every other language I read, I go, "Yes, this sounds like a wonderful idea."
That's funny. I thought I was the only person that happened to, and I thought there was something wrong with me because every time I read something about a new language, I'm like, "This is it, the perfect language." But it's never the perfect language.
Never.
Yeah, so Rust, I think, if it starts getting the same kind of traction that Go has been getting lately, I'll definitely take a bigger interest in it.
Gotcha. So our last, standard question, that as you called them, Adam, which I think is a good way to describe them, is for a programming hero. So someone you want to give a shout out to, Drew.
Sure. Everybody that I meet at conferences and everything is so, are always so genuine and so very nice. It shocks me all the time. But, a couple stand out in my mind. James Edward Gray, who lives pretty close to me in Oklahoma, and he's a really awesome guy, and he definitely does a lot of contributing to open source. And Evan Light is a good friend of mine, so a shout out to him. And he just joined Basho, and he's going to be doing some Erlang hacking. So I'm pretty excited for him about that. And my boss at Chargify, Michael Klett, he's a pretty cool guy too. So he definitely knows how to have a cool culture that you want to work for. So quick plug: Chargify is hiring if anybody. Ruby on Rails devs. So,
yeah, I think was Evan Light. He's the one with he was very open about a lot of the personal stuff that he was going through.
Yes, that's correct. So
yeah, I remember reading through his stuff and just was incredibly taken back by his candor and.
He's a man with a bigger heart who he's tested every single day, and so my heart goes out to him for sure.
Yeah, great guy though, for sure. Absolutely.
Cool. I guess since we're done with these standard questions, we can go with the standard close of the show. No, Drew, it was good having you on the show. I knew Andrew lined up a good show when he had you on, and we're big fans of Chargify. I think the story of Chargify, for those listening that may not know it, I mean, y'all have a pretty wild story with how you kind of grew out of Grasshopper Labs, and I just think the story of the last 5 years of Grasshopper Chargify has been really, really cool. So
yeah, it's for we're kind of in part of the old guard, ironically being only 5 years old, but that's a long time in this world, and so we've got that, and we've kept it small, and it's really been a good ride for us. So we're really happy with that.
Hey, you mentioned on the show too, I think closer to the middle somewhere in there, but you mentioned how you guys grow organically based on your actual company's growth, and it's just something I've seen from you guys, and have just always been taken back by that, and always respected the way that you've approached the market and approached growth of the company too. And the Michael that you mentioned as one of your heroes at Chargify, is he one of the old guards? Because I remember somebody named Michael I met a while ago.
Yeah, he's he was back with Grasshopper, and he basically is the first man to code on Chargify back when it was still a Grasshopper internal product.
Yeah, Michael and I met up at a Future of Web Apps back in 2008, so I know for sure that was 2000. No, that was 2010. 2010. We met up.
So yeah, it's a nice attitude, and it lets us kind of guide our own ship, and Lance, who's the CEO, he's a very genuine, very open guy. He plays with his hand on the table, and it's very refreshing.
Yeah, all that is to say, because you mentioned the jobs there, so if you're listening to the show, I mean, great place to work. So if you're a Rubyist or want to work on their stuff, head on over and say hello. But this has been episode 97 of the Changelog. We're almost to 100, Andrew. Can you believe that? So close.
No, yeah, we need to have a big party or something.
So close. We'll have to have like an all-day Changelog or something like that, for episode 100 or something. We'll have to do something like
Nobody wants to listen to us talk that much.
All day live. Nothing but the Changelog. All open source, all live. But thanks, Drew, for coming on the show. Let's all say goodbye.
All right. Thanks so much, man.
See ya.